way back, way cool, really relaxed. All of this from the dude from dropping facts and chilled out the real route that we can all take. I got to change back, just flex the break. Way cool, really relaxed. All of this from the dude from dropping facts and chilled out the real route that we can all take. I got to change back, just flex but don't break. That's right, that's right, that's right, that's right. Flexible, 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 flexible. Let me ask you, how do you feel? Do you chill? How do you deal when this ish gets way too real? You make me
Worldwide movement, peace, love, respect. Big King Sadiq hollering at you one more again. All right. Man. Thank you all. I love you all truly. Heartfelt, right? Man, we are starting our second episode, right? Of Building with Big King. Thank you all for chiming in. I see the room starting to fill up a little bit, right? This journey has been magnificent, right? And truly in large part to all of you, right? Certainly it wouldn't be possible to be at the point where we're at right now without all of you. So I do tremendously thank you all, and I love you all for helping to build a worldwide movement. Peace, love, respect, right? All right. Man, this is a very interesting subject, in my opinion. Hopefully they all are, right? But yeah, today we're going to be talking about the tool of introspection, right? And it's such a powerful and multifaceted tool, right? Really a lot of different ways that we can utilize introspection, and certainly a great deal that we have to gain from it. When I talk about introspection, we're talking about something that we generally utilize during the process of going in. Now, okay, we all have talked about going inward, right? We have heard stated in a million different ways, I'm sure. Oh, go in about that. Yeah, go look within, look inward, right? And I'm sure many of you may have at those times, particularly, or at some point along the way, said, well, exactly what is going inward? And like, why would I want to do that, right? Why is that something that is a worthwhile pursuit for me? And folks, going within or looking within and going inward, right, is indeed a process, right? And it's a state of being, in fact, that we can achieve whenever we choose to do so, provided we're able to get at the right vibrational frequency, the right mind state, the right mental place, or the right place emotionally. We can get ourselves prepared to venture in to that frontier, that might truly be the last frontier, right? Looking within yourself. Certainly, I acknowledge space, but think about that. Is that not perhaps man's greatest last remaining frontier? Is the journey within self, right? I stated that we have heard that mentioned in a myriad of different settings, situations, scenarios by a multitude of people. Many wise groups have even instructed for us to do that, like the indigenous folks around the planet, right? You know, we are global indigenous, right? I don't use personally the term black or white because I realize where those terms come from, why they were created in the 14 or 1500s, and what that whole utilization is about, right? I look at myself as globally indigenous. But many indigenous groups around the world, the Hopi Indian, the Australian indigenous, certainly indigenous folks in a myriad of countries within the continent of Africa. Not that I even like to give it that, utilize that name. But these groups have benefited from this technique for literally thousands of years, right? And have age-old wisdom that they have accrued by utilizing the technique of going inward. You know, how do we do that? Okay, so most commonly, folks find themselves utilizing meditative techniques, right? You focus on a particular subject and meditate on that subject so that you can open up profound internal knowledge about that subject. Now, one of the things that we should understand, I would say, is that going inward can mean a lot of different things, right? It can include going within yourself to make connection with the creative source, right? It can certainly include, and if you do that, then you're ultimately drawing from the source of all knowledge, right? You can go within yourself and utilize efforts to mine your Akashic record. Okay, folks, so many of us have heard of the Akashic record. The Akash in general is a vast bank of information, right? When we talk about the part of the Akash that is your Akashic record, we're literally talking about the wealth of experiences from your entire lifetime, right? Those experiences, the things you learned or gained from those experiences, and the wisdom that you have developed through the ages, and more specifically, the wisdom that you have gleaned, right, from being able to look within yourself and start to decipher different aspects of yourself looking within. Pardon me a moment. All right. So one of the things that we can do when we're looking inward is to realize that the Akashic record is a collective record of not only your past in reference to this lifetime, but your past in reference to all of your lifetimes, right? we are literally talking about the sum of your accrued knowledge lifetime to lifetime, right? That's what the Akashic record is. The Akash in general holds more than just the Akashic record, right? Your Akash also holds all of your future potentials, right? Potential timelines, all of the aspects of your Akash that deal with potentials or deal with future, right? Um, as opposed to your Akashic record, which is quite literally that, a record of your past experiences, not only in this lifetime, but previous lifetimes as well, right? One of the other things I wanted to mention in reference to going within is it could include, as I stated just a little bit, past life regression techniques, right? Um, your Akashic record is vast. And when we say mining your Akash, we're literally talking about that, right? Going deeper and deeper into self and discovering um, deeper and deeper and more vast sort of corners of your Akash that you can explore with greater depth and clarity. Now, how can we mine our Akash? When you are mining your Akash, this is where the beautiful tool of introspection can start to be utilized, right? Um, with introspection, you are literally engaging in self-examination, right? Um, folks, when we truly go within ourselves, we are starting to look at a myriad of different aspects of ourselves as human beings, right? Um, when I start to think of looking inward and introspection as a tool, um, I plainly look at it again as self-examination, right? We can start to look at our motives, right? What are the reasons why we do what we do or have done what we've done, right? Um, a concept that I was thinking about, folks, just the other day was the difference between who we are as a person, right? And who we are as our original self. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. Your original self, I would consider to be the human being that you are and that you were as you were born, right? Um, let's say ages from 0 to 5, right? When you were literally engulfed in just about every moment of your existence, you were engulfed in discovery, right? Can we try and think back a little bit in our lives to a time in our life when everything excited our curiosity, right? Children have that magnificent curiosity, that thirst for knowledge, for information, for input of various different types and from various different sources or people, right? In our lives, we draw experience from that, right? Um, Introspection is that tool that allows us to go back pathologically through our lifetime, right? And sort of take a walk, uh, a retroactive walk, I would say, right? Where we sort of walk back, trace our steps through our lifetime and our experiences, and take a look at how that has shaped us. Now, what I mean by there's a difference between you and who you are now as a person, start to think about, and we can literally start to do calculations in our mind. If we think about the number of experiences that we have in a given day. And when I say experiences, I'm referring to some form of stimuli, right? Some information, some action, some event, something that has served as a stimulus, something that will stimulate my or your mind into asking questions about ourselves, what we did, and more specifically, why we did it, right? The why question is very powerful and often lends itself to our motives and exploration of what our motives are for the things that we do or say, right? Um, when we start to take a hard look at ourselves, we can literally trace our steps backward. Pathologically, I like to say a lot of times. I use the word pathological, and I use that to describe my process because I like to get to origins, right? Um, and when I get to origins, it gives me a better look at causation, right? What is the reasoning, or what is the original causation of what it is I'm experiencing, right? Or what it is that I have experienced that I can draw some information from. Stimuli, right? We want to be stimulating our minds and stimulating ourselves mentally as we start to look at ourselves objectively. Now, that's one thing that is a must with introspection. It must be objective, right? You cannot go into any truly introspective session with subjective thoughts. Why? Because you will taint the discovery process, right? You'll be tainting the outcome or steering the outcome in a way that is not organic, right? When we are utilizing introspection, particularly in the example I had given, when we start to look at ourselves as a person, we can really start asking questions of ourselves to uncover causation, right? Um, I engaged in a certain activity that has become commonplace to me, right? Um, I can start to ask myself why, right? Not only have I done that in that particular situation, but why do I engage in this activity, right? We can start to think about just about every activity that we engage in and start to ask ourselves why, right? Um, this goes into truly looking at our behavior. Um, for example, when we run into people, right, whether it's in a social setting, um, um, some private engagement, some opportunity that we have to interact with another human being, right? When we do that, we are literally creating opportunities to utilize introspection, to objectively look at the people, places, things, situations, and scenarios that make up the meat and potatoes of our lives, right? Every person that you run into, every situation that you have, everything that provides stimulus for your mind to be able to analyze something um, is certainly the fuel that gets the engine of introspection going, right? Um, one of the most real and authentic things that we can do um, is to start to take a look and question our love, right? When I say our love, I'm talking specifically about truly unconditional love, right? Um, Truly unconditional love is just that. There are no preconceived notions. There are no judgments, right? There is not a box of reality that we can settle in, right? Or that we could start to load all of our existence into, that we can hide from ourselves, folks. In religious or theological schools of thought, there is what's called the self-accusing spirit, right? Um, why that is such a powerful thing to have is for the aforementioned reason I just gave you. You cannot lie to yourself. Now, you could try to trick yourself, right? And when you do that, we have a cute little word for that. It's called rationalization, right? Um, we could try to lie to ourselves and rationalize just about anything. But when we use introspection correctly, it doesn't allow us to do that because we don't even look at ourselves, or let alone the people, places, things, situations, and scenarios that engulf and make up the bulk of what our lives are. We don't look at those things subjectively, we look at them objectively, right? And this is difficult for a lot of people because of that reason. It's so difficult to stop rationalizing things because we don't want to be wrong. That's the bottom line, folks. Human nature at least has grown to develop to, or has evolved to a point where we simply don't want to be wrong. We're willing to fight tooth and nail, and certainly to argue to the last breath, to prove not only to others that we're not wrong, but probably most important, in our own minds, to prove to ourselves that we're not wrong, right? When that's really self-defeating. Folks, let me tell you this. I consider myself to be um, a very wise and schooled chess player, right? With very little limitations to my chess game, right? I have played, um, I'll be correct and say I have played those who have played masters, right? And have beat some. Um, and one of the biggest things about a true chess player, someone who really looks at chess as an art form, right? As, or let's just say they look at it as something beyond just a game, right? And look at um, the ability to develop your strategical intellect, as well as a myriad of other things, right? That involve examination. Okay. But one of the really important things that any really good chess player will tell you is that you don't learn anything when you win. You don't. You have learned nothing when you win. You only really learn as a chess player when you lose. And I would suggest that that is often correct with life, right? certainly I would reflect that it is correct with the process or the utilization of the tool of introspection. Folks, if you're going to attempt to look within and use introspection as a tool only to rationalize anything that could even potentially be an area where you made a mistake or a wrong judgment or some error or something that needs correction, you only learn when you come across those things. And if you're going to just rationalize them away, you're never going to learn anything, right? You are never going to learn a thing. So introspection certainly holds honesty, being honest with oneself, and being completely objective is a must of true introspection, right? Um, and in order for it to be a tool that enables you to get into, the vast arena of spiritual ascension, right? If you're talking about truly getting into your spirituality, if you're talking about truly being able to go within yourself and make connection with the creative source, you have to be completely objective. All the lies and the false pretenses have to be out the window. You're certainly not going to lie to the creator, right? You are not going to lie to your higher self, right? And again, in doing so, you're only fooling yourself or robbing yourself of the opportunity to learn and grow, right? Because ultimately, that's what the utilization of the tool of introspection is all about, folks. The tool of introspection, plainly put, again, is self-examination, right? But doing so from a truly objective platform. And if we do that and we get past the human tendency of rationalization, then the arena and the opportunity for growth is without limit, right? When you're able to get real with yourself, then you got a chance to grow. I would say the same is true of us all individually and most certainly of our society. Right now, our society is going through the ascension process, folks. We're talking about the evolution of humanity into higher consciousness, right? Certainly, this is not going to happen equally across the board for everyone at the same time, right? In terms of we will not arrive all at the same level of consciousness at the same time like that. But we are all on this journey, everyone on the planet, even folks who you may look at as having the most dim, dark, shut off, closed-minded, consciousness that you could possibly think of, or that in your determination a person could have, they too are beginning their ascension process. We're just not all beginning that from the same place, right? But in moving further forward, specifically the collective moving further forward, we've got to utilize every tool at our disposal. And one of the most powerful tools at our disposal is introspection. When we apply true introspection to our journey or our evolution collectively, folks, you can see the work ahead, right? Yes, the old paradigm is, but it's not even what it was 6 months ago. 6 months ago, I would have told you, and I did tell you, that the old paradigm is just remnants, right? It's like shards of broken glass falling away from an old paradigm that is broken and nearly gone. Now it's even less than that, right? It's literally just energetic flashes. And with those energetic flashes, there are attached behavior patterns, right? These behavior patterns we are seeing reoccur in the nations around the world that are regurgitating the same old behavior patterns. They're still looking to be able to get into wars. Folks, there are folks tied to the old paradigm who either consciously or subconsciously actually want to see World War III. Huh? This is what we're looking at. Introspection is a tool that we must have individually and collectively, right? We need to be able to go back and objectively look at ourselves as a society in order to start to glean where we went wrong. What mistakes have we made? And more importantly, what profound lessons can we glean from them? When we do that, then we will truly see consciousness explode. Now, I said that we will not get to like the same point or level of consciousness all at once, overnight, or at the snap of a finger. But along the way, there will be explosions of this, right? In other words, we will see continual steady progress, but there will, from time to time, will be situations or opportunities that our consciousness will actually explode collectively and make great advancement, right? No matter who it is that we're talking about, they will get better. Again, we're not all coming from the same place. So what looks like better on one individual may not quite look like progress on the next. Think about that. But yeah, we have got to have that tool of introspection in order for us to grow as a collective, right? If our governments are going to morph into what we need them to be, or if we're going to transform or even replace them altogether, we're going to need the tool of introspection to go back rationally, with spiritual maturity, with open minds, with good hearts, right? And with a clear intellect to be able to understand where we went wrong, right? And be able to position us or position ourselves as a society to be able to avoid the continuation of those mistakes or similar mistakes, right? Okay, folks. Again, just wanted to reiterate the usage of introspection as a tool, right? Particularly one that we utilize when we're getting into the state of going in or looking inward, reaching within ourselves for our answers rather than searching externally for answers. Folks, I've done a lot of studying and reading in my lifetime, right? I can honestly say that from my early at least my late teens for sure, I have been what they refer to as a traveling man, right? My travels take me on this journey through knowledge that has included the reading of many books, wonderful authors like Frances Cress Welsing. She's one of my favorites. Like Dr. Bobby E. Wright, et cetera, right? I'm not going to start making that list. But the point is, I have utilized books as a tool. I have listened to an innumerable amount of hours of folks who have shared their content online on one form or format or another. And I have been on this journey, like I said, literally since my late teens. Now, I will say that my spiritual awakening and my true identifiable ascension path goes back about 7 years or close to it, right? But the one thing that I most certainly have learned is that there is no way whatsoever I would have gotten to this point without the tool of introspection, right? Um, I simply would not have been able to get out of my own way. I certainly would have never been able to overcome that big monster of an obstacle known as our ego, right? Um, Not that we need to be without an ego, folks. Your ego is a necessity, it's part of you. But we most certainly need to have the ability to keep our ego in check. And we never want to let our ego be what leads or steers us in our behavior. At least that's certainly my endeavor. Um, but yeah, that tool of introspection is incredibly powerful, and it's something that we all have got to have in our individual tool belts and collectively as a society. All right. Um, there's certainly more that I could offer, but this is not just about me talking all day long, because y'all know I'll do that. Plenty of you who know me personally have at least had one time, you know, like, he just won't shut up, right? That you probably have thought that in your mind once we get going on a certain subject. Um, Certainly some of my best friends who have probably looked down at their phone halfway through the conversation, like, man, we've been talking for an hour and a half. Hey, look, King, I got some things to do, man. Right? Um, so I could keep going, but I won't do that. I most certainly am eager to hear from you all and go into the Q&A phase of this. And I see we already have some things posed. So let's sort of switch the format a little bit and let's see if we can get into some questions that folks have thrown out there. That would be pretty dope. All right, hey, y'all got to give me a second, right? I'm growing in this capacity, but am not necessarily, my children to tell you, I'm not technologically um, as adept as I should be. I'm getting there though, right? Give me a second and let me get on here and open this up for questions. Okay. Give me just a moment, folks. Yeah, I think we are getting set. Okay. Open for Q&A, please. Okay, folks. So now I had a question already there that for some reason I lost. Please forgive me. Let's check again. Okay. So, my dear friend, Mavi, Mavi, me, please bear with me if I okay. Let me wrap my eyes around this. So Marvy states, I think about this in the sense of our natal vibrational frequency and how it becomes diluted, distorted, and transformed through our experiences. Spot on. Man, do I agree wholeheartedly with that. Sister V, listen, from the time we are babies, right? Um, we have someone else's external input that is shaping us, right? From the time we're in the womb, even, and we start hearing input from different sources from this world, right? Um, Start to invade our little peaceful area as embryo, as we're in the womb. We start getting input from the outside world, and already then it starts to shape us and change our vibrational frequency because it solicits response from us, right? And each of those responses will carry with it a vibrational frequency that is something foreign to what we come into the planet with. So certainly spot on with that, sister. Thank you so much for that. Um, let's see, do we have any more? Shout out to Extos de Heliopolis. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that, right? But shout out to you. Thank you for checking out the podcast in its growing stages as we're just on Ep.2. Wonderful comment uh, by Mavi. And I certainly concur with that. Folks, if we think about it, right, we know how our aura has different layers or bodies to it, right? So does your persona. Your persona is what we were just talking about. Your persona is what you build up in reaction to or response to the outside world and its external influences and or stimuli, right? What you develop in response to that is what builds your persona, right? And this is a real intangible thing in just about every aspect of us, right? Mentally, your persona exists as what you have built up. Spiritually, right? You can gain spiritual baggage for sure by what you build up during that process. Um, Emotional, certainly, right? Um, and even physical, folks, which is something I think a lot of us don't really perceive, right? And we may be veering just a little bit off subject, folks, but it does certainly tie back to the uses of the tool of introspection because it is through true introspection that we can glean this, right, about ourselves. But physically, you wear your persona in your body, right? The physical condition that your body is in, the shape of your body, even your literal weight that you put on your body. Think about something. How many of us, or how many times, because this rings true, I'm sure, for just about every human being at some point in their lives, how many times have we eaten food out of reasons other than true hunger? How many times have we been bored and eaten food? How many times have we eaten food nervously, sometimes not even realizing it, right? Our nerves are really, we're in a nervous state about something, and we find ourselves eating, right? How many times do we eat to soothe ourselves in painful situations, circumstances, or scenarios, right? Um, there are many instances where we consume food or food products, right? Um, and that packs onto our body. That carries with it its own frequency. And it's an external foreign frequency that is not your natal vibrational frequency. Thanks again for that, Mom V. Essentially the frequency that we come into this planet with. Um, so yeah, your persona, you literally wear it, right? Many of you who know me, or at least those who have been checking me out in my platform for some years now, you know the transformation that I've undergone physically, right? I have lost at one point close to 100 pounds, right? Folks, that's a small person, huh? Keep it funky. That's a small person. And again, those were layers of my persona, right? One of the things that I talk about is that I now literally hold unconditional love for everyone and everything in existence. Literally. I literally have unconditional love for every man, woman, child on this planet or any other, right? For any rock, tree, blade of grass, droplet of water, right? For anything in existence, right? Our Creator created it out of the love of allowing it to become a thought form and then manifesting it into existence, which includes us creator beings who also have the ability to manifest, right? All of that is born from true unconditional love. And I would say that I would literally not have the capacity for that if it were not me shedding those layers of my persona that I would have only uncovered, that I have only uncovered through diligently utilizing on a daily basis that tool of introspection. Really. In Islam, there is the term waging jihad, right? And during my time in that theological discipline, I got into Sufism, which is loosely referred to as Sufis are loosely referred to as Islamic mystics, right? But certainly, and I gave like a little side look on that, but there's certainly much more than that, right? And truly, they are a group that I would consider gets to the purity, the spiritual purity of Islam. Well, at any rate, in Sufism, they give a much more profound, or at least to me, profound meaning of jihad. Most of us understand the popular meaning of jihad, right? Which is religious war. But in reality, and in the truest, most introspective meaning of jihad, jihad means waging war within self, right? It means cutting away all within yourself that is not pleasing unto the sight of Allah, right? So that gives you an example of how even in a religious context, the tool of introspection is deemed to be very profound, right? Thank you, Malvi. Yes, indeed. And you mentioned the Akashic record again. We can talk about that a little bit more. Sister Heather Tokus, my dear friend down in West Virginia. We will read her comment real quick. Thanks for inviting me to this today. You're most certainly welcome. Thank you a million times more for chiming in. I've really got to get you back on the calendar at the Metastone. Sister, you know that is a big thumbs up anytime. I don't know if I want to be using that symbology. We'll have to talk about that one day, but that's an automatic yes out of me anytime. We just have to line our schedules up. I've had major shifts and growth spurts in the last 2 months, and I am only more on fire. Yes, indeed. That violet fire, not violent with an N, but violet, like the color. When we are in spiritual purification or we are doing the work, the actual work of spiritual maturation, the color of that is that we are on the spiritual color is that we are on violet fire, right? We really are passionately and emotionally engaged in that spiritual process. Okay. And it says, I am a social eater or a pity party eater. Okay. Okay. My goal is to lose 80 pounds. High five. You will do it. Not go ahead and try that, Heather. Not I think that's a good idea to maybe embark on. You will accomplish that. True indeed. And yeah, socially, that's another. I'm glad you said that, Heather. Thank you so much. That is another big sort of arena where we find ourselves eating, consuming food or food products without even really consciously digesting the fact that we're digesting. Right? We're not really thinking about the fact that we're eating. We're really just sort of mirroring. Now, many of us recognize the term mirroring from sociology, right? But we are actually mirroring the folks in the room in that behavior of eating, right? When we are engaging in social eating. And pity party, yeah, certainly when we are feeling down about something, food can be very soothing, right? I certainly have at one time or another in my life engaged in that. And I will say again, most of us have. Folks, what do we do right after? What do most folks do? I don't attend them anymore, but what do most or many folks do right after funerals? You go and eat, right? You go and eat. When we know that someone has experienced a loss, right? What do many people do? You bring food, right? Yes, one for the convenience. It lends someone to not have to cook during such a trying time, but probably more profoundly, the fact that food soothes, right? Especially really good food soothes. Okay, you sent the question also, Heather. I need to try and find that question. Give me one moment. Let me get. I see this as two sections, and when I open up the Q&A section, I think I'm losing the questions and I'm having to read straight from the comments. Bear with me, folks. Again, please. I'm going to get better. I'm going to get better and start navigating through this format more flawlessly. But for now, I would suggest, I guess, to put your questions or comments in the comments section. And I'll see, or in the chat section, and I'll see it right away. But literally, it gave me an option on my stream to open up a Q&A. And I've done that, but I'm not seeing how I can go in and find any questions that were submitted. My apologies, family. Again, bear with me on that. I'm going to get fluid with this process eventually. But yeah, I stated that about her meeting her goal of the weight she wanted to lose as an affirmation, because certainly we need to do that first. We have to see it. We have to visualize it in our mind. We have to cognize it, meaning that we believe it and understand it as a reality beyond the requisite of linear 3D, 4D proof, as we would state. But it is a reality, right? But yeah, folks, just rounding back to the subject matter, using that tool of introspection is very powerful. And that is certainly something that we are going to need to lean on individually and collectively in order to move and advance further forward in paradigm shift, right? It's an absolute must that we have that tool in our spiritual tool belt, right? Okay. And in our psychological tool belt, I'll state that as well. But yeah, all right, folks, thank you so much, everybody who has chimed in. Please know how much that means to me for us to be able to engage in this, right? Folks, when we do this, this is actively the worldwide movement, peace, love, respect, blossoming, right? We're actually cementing and fermenting, or not fermenting, and firming up the foundation of our new paradigm, a high vibrational frequency paradigm that I like to say exhibits the characteristics of peace, love, respect. All right. Okay, Marv's got another question. I said, as Americans, we see this putting on in our obesity and other health rates, also in our consumptions of drugs. How do you think this affects the ability to be introspective and develop? Let me see if I can pull this up. Bear with me. I'm sorry. Or I'm not sorry. I apologize. There's a difference. And develop self. Okay, true indeed. True indeed. Hey, Deanne, connecting the dots with Deanne. All right. Mavi, thank you. Fabulous comment and question once again. So she's absolutely right. The same tendency, right? Remember how I referred to us building the layers of our persona, and that physically we build actual layers that we pack onto our body um, through our eating tendencies. She is absolutely right that we do the very same thing in building up the layers of our persona through drug use, right? Which is likely and probably um, much more devastating, or at least can be. Not that it's never harmful, but whether or not it's more harmful than the eating issue is something that we can waffle back and forth on. But yes, most certainly, I would have to say that drugs um, are layers of our persona that we learn to build, many of us very early in life. For example, I myself got into utilizing alcohol, which I tend to lump in with drugs. Um, and I do not lump in marijuana, um, ganja, or cannabis, right? Into that same classification. We can get into that conversation later. We most certainly will. But yeah, alcohol I got into personally in my life, like heavy, I mean, at like 11 years old. That's true fact. If anybody is chimed in who knew me back then, they'll tell you, particularly my partners B and my man Wayne, will tell you we used to be down Homewood behind dumpsters, behind buildings, tilting up 40s of malt liquor at 11. Huh? Um, and alcoholism grew to be something that was a very troubling problem for me uh, through my early years in life, right? But drugs in general, um, cocaine and any amphetamine, folks, just so you know, so I don't neglect to throw this out there. And I did just spark up a little of the brethren, sister and brethren, marijuana, ganja. Again, a reminder, folks, I gave this disclaimer on the first episode of the podcast, but I need to do so every episode. This is most certainly an adult forum, right? Not for children. Could be potentially some language used, um, or behavior or activity that we don't necessarily want to be suggestive to children with, like smoking, for example, of any kind. Um, but yeah, man, just keeping it real with that. I was talking about amphetamines. And they are, and this is true actually of a lot of different street drugs, even many barbiturates, that they're very damaging to your pineal organ. Let me throw that out there. Now, as you see me partaking of the cannabis, I should share with you a little bit that many of you may not know about my practices in doing so. And using cannabis. I years ago I started doing this, probably about 6 years ago, 6.5 years ago. I realized that most of us are just very blindly consuming cannabis, right? Without, one, very importantly, showing gratitude, right? I feel like cannabis is, on a spiritual level, a partner in our evolution as a people, as a species, right? Into higher consciousness, and as a tool that we should have never been robbed of. Negative shout out to Harry Anslinger and his partner. I forget the guy's name, was Paper Tycoon from Pennsylvania, coincidentally. I forget that guy's name, but shout out to them negatively, a negative shout out to them for their movement that made cannabis illegal, right? But it should never have been, because it has always been a tool that has aided us in introspection, right? And that even through different tribal or ceremonial techniques, we use ayahuasca or cannabis or different herbal aids, right? Shrooms that can aid us in our walk through what we tend to term as the spirit world, or through our walk internally, right? Aid us in introspection. But again, talking about what I do specifically in showing my gratitude, after I've rolled it, I spew my intention into it. First of all, my gratitude. Thank you, brethren, sister and brethren, marijuana, ganja, righteous, cannabis. Thank you, family. Accept my love and gratitude and aid me further. Here's where my intentions come in. Aid me further in highest vibrational frequency resonance, healing in all ways, and in DNA upgrade and route to 100% DNA efficacy. Thank you, my brethren, sister and brethren, marijuana, ganja, righteous, cannabis. That's when I'm drawing in air in through the king's chamber, right? Just like the pyramids at Giza. Thank you, my creator, in me and everywhere that be, to aid us all further forward. May my gratitude to my creator grow exponentially, eternally. New world paradigm, peace, love, respect, worldwide minimum, solar system, galaxy. And I spew all that into the L before I partake in it. And I do that every single time. Anybody who smokes with me knows that. But anyway, getting back to our conversation. Yeah, most certainly getting back to what Mavi was talking about. Drugs definitely add some very detrimental layers, and often layers to our persona that we end up developing karma about, right? And folks, if in case you weren't aware or didn't realize, this area of the galaxy that we are in our solar system's orbit around the center of the galaxy, with these energies we're exposed to, we have every opportunity to drop our karma completely, which is something new for us, but we can do that. But yeah, most certainly drugs offer a very harmful layer to our persona, and layers to our persona that we most certainly have to be conscious of our having fluid awareness about, right? It's part of our growth and development that we cannot ignore, right? Okay. Another part of that question, how do you think this affects the ability to be introspective and develop self? Well, hard drugs, or quote unquote street drugs, like I said, have a very unfortunate and detrimental effect on your pineal organ, right? Folks, they go to aid in something called the calcification of our pineal organ, right? And it is most certainly an organ and not just um, um, it's an organ and not just a gland, right? Like it's typically referred to. Um, I think that drugs really hamper our ability to objectively engage in introspection, right? Because I think they cloud things for us. They cloud our vision, particularly internally, um, and physically. Most drugs, again, directly damage your pineal organ, right? Um, most of them add to a process that is very harmful for your pineal organ called calcification, where you start to build up calcium deposits, literal calcium deposits on your pineal organ as a result of drug use. And there are other ways that we can suffer from that calcification, but drug use is most notably one of the more detrimental or profound ways that we can be negatively impacted by drugs directly in terms of our pineal organ and whether or not it is becoming more calcified, which we don't want, obviously. Um, but yeah, that touches on how we are affected in terms of our ability to be introspective and to develop ourselves. Um, drugs most certainly adds to our persona in a way that is very profound and affects our ability to be introspective and really develop ourselves, right? That's what we want to do as human beings, is we want to always be going through a process of rounding ourselves off, of being more stable and complete um, as people, right? Okay. I saw something a little while ago that I meant to get to, Heather. So my question is, do you think if people learn to utilize the gift of introspection, that there would be less miscommunication and discord between individuals? Yes. uh, with a big yes. Um, Folks, when we communicate with other people, we're opening up a line of communication, right? A direct line of sharing uh, 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 between one another. And we have opened up um, a communication that is not just important, but it's very direct, right? Um, when we have real introspection, you have the ability to understand yourself deeply and profoundly enough that you're able to positively shape and impact your interaction with anyone else, right? Because you have so much of a better tool, right? Or so many better tools on your tool belt to be able to enter into the process of introspection, right? To really be able to communicate with another person. The more you understand yourselves, the better you'll be able to get across whatever message you have for the next individual, right? Um, it goes a lot toward that concept of we have to have something within ourselves in order to give it to somebody else, right? We often talk about love in those ways. We have to have a certain wellspring of unconditional love within ourselves if we expect it all to be able to give that to the next person, right? Well, the same thing goes with introspection. The better we understand ourselves, the better we understand what we want to get across to the other individual or anyone else externally, right? And once we understand that better, then our ability to communicate with the next individual or with anyone externally is only enhanced, right? All right. And that certainly goes a long way toward us being able to avoid discord amongst one another, right? And to minimize confrontation and conflict. When we find that we are communicating effectively, we are often much better at not painting ourselves in the corners, right? We are often much better at being able to truly listen to a person actively rather than just hearing them, right? And most certainly, when we have clear communication amongst ourselves, then we avoid a whole plethora of misunderstandings about one another or with one another, right? All right. Connecting the dots with Deanne. Hey, she's in here hollering at us and gives a shout out to our mutual friend, Deanne. Heather gives a shout out to you and I, and we're all mutual friends. Myself, Deanne of Connecting the Dots with Deanne, please go to her channel and make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Myself, Deanne, and Heather are all close friends. Amongst all of my other close friends, like Marvi, who is a very long time close friend of mine, and those who we would consider to be other members of our circle, so to speak, right? As we're developing that much more as we continue to grow in this forum, right? Okay. Mavi states beyond chemical drugs, drugs can be almost any material thing we consume to alter, obscure, and or escape our relationship to suffering, loss, and pain. Yes, that is a very profound statement, Mavi. Drugs is sort of like an avatar, right? It's sort of like a generic avatar for things that hamper or interfere with our ability to process our reality, right? Linearly and on a multi-dimensional level. So that's spot on with that. Marvin, and thank you for that observation indeed. I think it is really important what you said about perspective to failure. Yes, utilizing introspection not only can help us to prevent failure or many forms of failure, but gives us the tool that we absolutely need in order to grow from any failure in our lives, right? Without having that tool of introspection to be able to lean on to take those retroactive footsteps back through our life to understand the myriad of stimuli that we have had to respond to throughout our lives. Folks, I think I started to do this but didn't earlier, but we can actually calculate it and start to paint a picture for ourselves of how this builds us up um, as different layers of our persona. And what I mean by calculating that is, think about in one day the experiences that you have, right? In one single solitary day, think about all of the different things that elicited some form of response from you during the course of your day, right? That I would put in the category of stimuli, okay? If we are constantly responding to and reacting to external stimuli from not only just the moment we're born, but while we're actually in the room. And if that is adding to and building the different layers of our persona, right? Then how many of those instances do we have in just one day? From the time you wake up to the time you go to bed. Folks, I can even just come up with a very conservative number. Let's say we have 10 experiences in one day that in some way or another elicit some sort of or require of us some sort of a response or reaction. Okay? Just 10 in the course of a 24-hour day. We know realistically that number is likely much higher. But let's just go with that conservative number of 10 experiences that would require of us some response or reaction that we can classify as stimuli, right, to help our persona grow. Okay? Just 10. Folks, we're talking about over 3,600, what, like 3,650 in the course of a year, almost 4,000 of these different forms of stimuli, right? That's essentially what they are. 4,000 pieces of stimuli that we have to wade our way through in order to decipher exactly what it is that makes up our persona and the different layers that encompass that. That's pretty deep, a pretty deep undertaking for us to go on and to appreciate that literally on a yearly basis, you're talking about almost 4,000 experiences that impact you in such a way that it shapes your persona. So just think about over the course of 10 years, right? Well over 40,000 of these experiences that are shaping you. And again, we know realistically that number is much higher. These are the things that go toward building us up realistically as the person that we have grown into today, which I would offer up is not the same person that you were when you came into this planet, right? Reverting back to what Ma V stated about your natal vibrational frequency. By the time you are, a teenager or even a preteen, you have grown so many layers to your persona that you have truly shifted your vibrational frequency from its original setting to far beyond that. If we had sort of a radio dial, right, which you kind of do, called a pineal, right, then that is a large scale, right? Or large distance traveled in the scale of frequency. Just by the time from the time we are, let's say, you know, we'll say born into the world until the time that we're preteens. Um, so certainly by the time we be, you know, I'm 50 years old, right? Um, so of course, when I shed those 100 pounds, I was shedding quite a few layers of my persona, which again reverts back to me even having the capacity to be able to have grown in the ways that I have during my spiritual ascension um, in these past 7 years. So, yeah, folks, introspection is a very powerful tool um, because if you think about it, none of what we just described, what we have even been aware of, let alone able to pull off successfully as growth without having the tool of introspection at our disposal, right? So yeah, man, magnificent. Mavi stated, if we can build a better understanding of how we learn through failure, then we can develop better introspection to support the loss and pain we'll ultimately experience in life. Yes, yes, folks. Um, I do that often myself. You know, I use introspection to take that walk back retroactively to be a pathologist in my own life. And when I do that, yeah, I'm certainly learning and highlighting all those very profound and valuable lessons that I gleaned through all the failures or pains in my life. But also, folks, and this is something I was thinking about profoundly yesterday, that most of us fail to do is that the flip side of all that is we should also be going back through our lives retroactively or pathologically to have a great understanding of what we can learn, of what we should glean from our successes in life, right? From the good choices that we've made or from the things that we've sort of gotten right, okay? There are often very profound lessons there to be gleaned as well. And not only that, there is a very powerful opportunity for us to be supportive of ourselves and to build ourselves up. Certainly to build up our esteem. Many of us have gone through so much in this life that it has really torn down our self-esteem, right? And when you go back through your life retroactively and pathologically to not only see the failures and the pain in your life, but to see the successes and good times in your life and to learn and glean from that as well, you provide yourself with an opportunity to build yourself up to say, I didn't do too bad here. Okay, this is part of me that I've gained or that I've grown into that I want to keep, right? As I build the new person that I am today. So that's powerful. Mavi, certainly, so that we are not distorted by our experiences, but have become robust in our knowledge about how to live in this world. Yes, we do need that. By having that robust sort of collage of experiences. Isn't that what life is, right? A collage of experiences from the time, like I said, that we're in the womb to the time that we are departing this planet, right? Departing this plane of existence, more aptly put. All right. LOL said a lot. Hey, thank you for saying a lot. We celebrate everything you said, Ma V, and we appreciate that. Thank you so much for chiming in. Please, please continue to do so on future podcasts. I need you, right? so thank you for being there. I appreciate that so much. Got to glean the golden. That's right. That's right. Man, shout out to oh my goodness, Sister Jill Scott, right? Living my life like it's golden. Watch that video, y'all. When we leave out of here, I probably will. Powerful song, and we definitely need to do that, right? Because our lives are golden if we only but knew, right? If we looked at our lives the way they're viewed from the other side of the veil, we would have so much higher self-esteem and would look at ourselves in our lifetimes in so much of a more appreciative light, right? Because truly we are appreciated from the other side of the veil. All of us brave souls who have come here and incarnated into this human experience, right? So that's profound. That's sis, peace, love, respect. And indeed, I want to thank you. Thank you, Heather, so much, tremendously. Thank you, Deanne. Heather and Marv have had quite a few comments that have really helped to shape our conversation here. And I want to tip my hat. If I had a cop, I'd do that. But I certainly want to make sure that I bow out to you and thank you so much gracefully and graciously. I can't even put into words how much I appreciate not only both of you, but everyone who has even peeked in for a second and everyone in the future who looks at the podcast. I thank you and I love you all. We're going to continue doing this, and we're going to continue doing what? Building the worldwide movement. Peace, love, respect. Big King Sadiq, I love you all. Thank you all. Tune in next week, but do so at a new time. We're going to likely try 7 p.m. I was looking for a time in between 5 and 9 because I think that'd be a little bit better on a Saturday for people to be able to have gotten some things out of the course of their early day, gotten some things out of the way, and maybe freed them up a little bit. So I came up with 7 o'clock. Going forward, if anyone has any suggestions on a time that we can settle in on as a regular time for the podcast to air, please get at me with that, and I'll sort of tabulate those suggestions and round it out to a time, and we'll just settle in permanently on that. For right now, I think we'll be hovering at 7 o'clock. So please, next week, tune in at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we will have another episode of Building with Big King. I thank you all for chiming in and building with me today. I love you all. Worldwide movement. Peace, love, respect. Big King Sadiq. I'm out.